Well, the Ukrainian military is facing an acute manpower crisis as the war with Russia drags on. Desertions are at critical levels, and the number of young men avoiding conscription is also high. So-called mobilization units have the job of tracking down draft dodgers, but some are accused of employing brutal tactics. DW special correspondent Misha Jaiswal reports now from the city of Lviv.
A daily ritual here in Ukraine, a moment of silence for fallen soldiers. And then on to the business of the day, looking for new ones. Serhiy and Alexander work in Lviv as part of one of Ukraine's mobilization units, the TCK.
We're from the TCK, checking your military documents.
They stop men on the street and check their papers to see if they're exempted from mobilization. They might have a job deemed essential, more than 3 kids, or a sick relative. But some are dodging the draft.
So they've done some 20 checks like this one already in the last couple of hours. That looked pretty standard. The guy pulled out his phone, showed them the app, said he doesn't have to be mobilized. But in those last 2 hours, we've also come across 2 men who saw these uniformed officers and made a dash for it. It did seem like they didn't have the papers, but these officers were not able to verify that.
We caught one of them on camera.
Good afternoon.
Get back in. Get back in.
This is an example of a person running away. You can see it. The person is running away. We're not going to chase after him, but we would really like to talk to him.
If we hadn't been there, the officers might have gone after them. Alexander is sure why the man ran.
In most cases, about 90%, they're simply afraid of mobilization. It hurts me deeply. In the first days of the war, I went to defend the country. If we all run away, we will simply all be killed.
But it's not just the war that is frightening. Videos of violent TCK detentions regularly go viral on social media. As of June this year, authorities opened investigations into over 900 allegations of violence and abuse of power by TCK officers. For the officers too, the checks can be risky. Alexander and Serhiy say Russian disinformation campaigns deliberately amplify fear and criticism of the TCK and hostility towards the officers, which they say the videos don't show. One of them was killed on the job earlier this month here in Lviv.
What's most frightening is what people are capable of now. They're so afraid they're ready to kill someone. He's not ready to go to war, but he's ready to wave a knife around here in the rear to stab military personnel. Ready to kill someone? Well, then go and defend your country.
Alexander and Serhiy told us about a check the previous evening that could have gone wrong. They showed us footage from the body cams that new rules say they have to wear.
No, guys. I'd rather go to prison, no question.
Don't do something stupid.
I won't give in, guys.
Calm down.
I won't give in.
Calm down.
They told us a crowd gathered around them, yelling to leave the man alone.
A young woman comes up. She says, "Oh, you're my enemy now." She points to the police. "You're my enemies." Now in Western Ukraine, in cities where it's quieter, they all say that their main enemies now are the TCK and the police. And believe me, it's so offensive to hear this all the time.
Western towns like Lviv do feel far from the war. Air alerts are relatively rare, as are power cuts. Tourists from other regions flock to the festive markets. But many here do think the TCK's work is needed.
They have to do their job. There's no other way. What needs to be done is to change people's attitudes towards it, to make it not so scary, and give guarantees of safety.
I feel sorry, of course, for the men who are caught. It's a pity. But who's supposed to fight if the TCK doesn't catch men?
The military are people too, and people who serve are not perfect. Some people lose their temper. This creates hype, and it's multiplied by Russian and enemy bots.
Though the officers can check anyone they choose, they've come up with some of their own rules to try to find fit men of fighting age.
I can calculate a person's age with an accuracy of up to 1 year. We even make little jokes amongst ourselves. We argue about who can guess their age more accurately.
People are different. We see normal guys, athletic, more or less age 30 plus. We approach those people. There are different kinds of people, thin, frail, someone who looks poor and miserable. And if you put body armour and full military gear on them, they simply wouldn't cope. They would become a burden for the army. We try to avoid people like that.
But they have no patience or sympathy for people they see as able-bodied draft dodgers.
Why should some people obey the law while others decide not to? One told me, I'm not a citizen, I'm a human being. I hear this and that's it for me. I see red. I don't know what to do. I want to say such a terrible thing. I want to drag him to the front line so that he can spend at least an hour there, look at the suffering of these people and understand that you may never see your family again. And I think he wouldn't say such things after that.
Like most TCK officers, Serhiy and Alexander are military men. Serhiy was demobilized for health reasons, but Alexander has seen combat. They tell us the job is crushing because they are so disliked, that they know men who'd rather be in combat than serve in the TCK. But they say Russia cannot be trusted to stop, and the front line remains hungry for new soldiers.
Well, I'm joined now by Domitila Sagramoso, a security analyst at King's College in London. It's good to have you back on the program. You know, when we're looking at forced mobilization, is that the only way to recruit more Ukrainians into the army? I mean, on the outside, this looks like a war that has very little gray. I mean, Ukraine has been attacked, has been invaded. It should be easy to motivate young soldiers or young men to fight for their country. And yet, this story that we just saw suggests that it may not be that easy. How do you read this?
Yes, I think it was much easier during the first year of the war. There were a lot of volunteers, far too many almost, because fighters need to be trained, they need to be fed, they need to have the proper equipment. So you need a whole infrastructure around it. So the first years were much more successful in terms of recruitment, but later on, as the kind of war that set in was sort of a kind of attrition war. Mm-hmm. The casualty rate is very high. So that really scares many of the potential recruits who should be going to the front lines. So they know that, it's highly risky. There were problems also with sort of equipment and ammunition. So that also disincentivized some. I think that, we are already in the fourth year of the war, and maybe some of them do not see, that there is a perspective of victory. So they are very hesitant. But I think there have been new programs that have been set up. Earlier this year, there was an incentive program for those between 18 and 24, those who are not obliged to serve. And this is a mechanism of incentive with money, with possibility to get a mortgage, without interest rates, payments. Also the possibility to have time for demobilization after you've been serving on the front lines, because this is also a key issue. How much time do you have, once you demobilize, and whether you're able actually to spend time off, the front lines. And this is one of the greatest challenges. Yeah. People are very tired. They've been there for years. Yes.
And I can imagine also that it's difficult for young men to think about demobilization when their fear may be that they are going into the army to be cannon fodder for a war of attrition. Does this have impacts on the actual battlefield? Does it affect the quality of Ukraine's fighting force?
It affects in the sense that, as was noted in your segment, that the army doesn't want soldiers that are not, to a certain extent, motivated, because they have an impact within the group and within the regiment potentially, or the battalion. So you want to avoid these kind of individuals who are not highly motivated. But at the same time, Ukrainians are facing serious challenges. The front line is 1,200 kilometers long, and there are points where there is no defense at all. So the Russians, they try to find these small spaces where they can penetrate, because Ukrainians do not have the capability to monitor and defend effectively the entire front line. And this is something that we are witnessing in areas, such as eastern Zaporizhia, where the Russians are advancing a bit more effectively than in other parts of the Donbass. What also happens is that there are some regiments that are more popular than others. So some regiments do their own recruitment, or some battalions do their own recruitment. And so some are attracted to go into these specific regiments or battalions that are much more effective, and they are really able to make a big difference. So I think there is a real challenge there. It's very hard to resolve. Money is not essentially, playing the massive role that one would have expected. In Russia, I think money seems to be playing a much more relevant role. I mean, the Russians pay very much higher salaries than the average. So they're managing to attract more. And the numbers, they say that the rate is one of one Ukrainian soldier to 6 or 8 Russian soldiers. So this is very problematic.
That's a point, though, isn't it? Though, that if you're a young Ukrainian man, you know that you can risk your life, you can sacrifice your life, but for what? If there are 6 other men in Russia that can be sent to the battlefield to fight you.
Yes, I mean, the balance is tough. That's why Ukrainians have been relying a lot in improving their own technology. And for the first 2 or 3 years, I mean, they were very effective with drone warfare, and they have killed very high numbers of Russians. The casualties and the rates among Russians is extremely high. Ukrainians are also suffering significant losses, because now the Russians have sort of upped their game, and they have copied many of the sort of technological advancement of the Ukrainians and scaled them up, especially when we think about drones. So the situation is extremely challenging, but the Ukrainians are still sort of trying to see if they can develop more effective, technological advancements. And robotics is an area which is increasingly being developed together with artificial intelligence. We have robots, for example, doing logistic groundwork. So, I think we're really moving along the technological field, and it's going to be very interesting to see, to what extent eventually we might have, actually soldiers that are more robots than humans. But this, leads to a sort of a technological arms race, because your opponent can also then copy the system and scale it up. So it is a challenge, but the Ukrainians are being very effective, so far at defending most of the entire front. And I think there are cases which is good that they are highlighted, and that there is an effort not to make these recruitment efforts so brutal, because that really demoralizes the entire population.
Domitila, unfortunately, we're out of time, but we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. We appreciate your insights today as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.